The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Yeah, hello everyone. Wanted to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you are in the country. I'm out here on the East Coast. So it's been a crazy couple months to say the least, but the good news is that it finally seems like there's a little light at the end of the tunnel. So with that, we wanted to come together and share some insights and some ideas on how to get your dealership back to business as the country begins to, slowly reopening, right? Sorry about that, my screen. So my name is Mike Flynn. I'm a sales director here at Adtaxi. For anyone not familiar with Adtaxi, we are a full-scale digital marketing firm that specializes in the automotive space. I'm lucky enough to be joined by Darragh O'Doherty from Google, where he serves as the agency development manager for that team. And we're just going to assume everyone knows who Google is. So, I'm sorry?
I was just saying thanks for having me on the webinar.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So kind of this is going to be our discussion today, what we'll be kind of going over. So, there's a lot of topics we'll be discussing today. There's so much information around all this, we could literally spend all day talking about it. But instead, we're just going to briefly summarize, what's happened to get us to this point. We'll also look at what is currently going on with potential auto shoppers. And then we're going to go out kind of on a limb and try to get a feel for, what can be expected to happen based on recovery patterns from the past, market downturns that we've experienced. So with all that in mind, we'll then get into the likely shifts in consumer behavior that you'll need to account for as you try to get your dealership back to business. We'll also aim forward with some specific recommendations and ideas that you can implement right away. Some recommendations that are more short-term over the next few months, and then finally some strategies you'll want to work on, basically over the next year or so. So hopefully once we're done, you'll have a solid idea on the direction that you want to go, go into coming out of this even stronger than you were going in. So that's kind of the goal here. So what's happened? So obviously, COVID-19 happened, right? It kind of shut us all down. Pretty unexpected, right? I don't know that we've ever been in a situation like this before, at least not in my lifetime. So let's take a look at, how that kind of manifested and affected auto sales and, shopping behaviors. The country started restricting people and businesses. So what you're looking at here is this information comes from Experian. If you're not familiar with they have an absolute treasure trove of data on consumer purchases and consumer behavior. So Experian put this website together in response to the COVID outbreak, and you can see the link at the bottom if you want to check that out later for yourself. But it's updated weekly with shopping trends on the map. Also year-over-year sales trends over here on the right. And year-over-year dealership website traffic in the bottom right. So what I find most interesting here is that the year-over-year sales decline hit the bottom on the week of March 30th, which you can see kind of represented by that negative 69 number right here, negative 69%. So there's obviously been ups and downs since then, but each week moving forward has been better than that low point, and generally has been trending up a bit. Dealer web traffic took an extra week to kind of bottom out, but it's the same story too. Subsequent weeks have slowly recovering. So, that's basically what has happened. I'll just kind of turn it over to Darragh now to kind of talk about what's happening right now. So, Darragh, over to you.
Thanks, Mike. So, essentially, at Google, we've been tracking the evolution of the auto path to purchase for, I would say, over a decade now. And we've really witnessed the emergence of new digital behavior in that kind of shopping process. In the last few years in particular, we've seen a big investment and growing reach of online video, driving higher awareness and consideration, and automotive watch times and so on are increasing every year. But in the wake of COVID-19, we've seen the digital test drive emerge as a key touch point for for the new stay-at-home world. And searches for, things like dealership near me, they've dropped significantly since the height of the pandemic. But that decline has stopped, and what we're seeing now is an upward trajectory and a slow growth in the market. And really kind of what a lot of our internal information tells us, and surveys that we've put out in the US and worldwide to potential auto shoppers, is that shoppers are still in market, and they still want to engage with vehicles and with dealerships. They're just now looking for a new contactless way, and digital seems to be the channel to do that. And I mentioned, that new digital behavior. Well, one thing that isn't new, I guess, is price sensitivity. Really striking graph here, actually. So this is from Google Trends, and this is a free external tool that anybody can use to kind of look at near real-time search data across various industries, countries, and so on. But really, kind of car buyers now, they want to know if now is a good time to purchase a vehicle, and if so, they want to score a good deal. Search interest for, is now a good time to buy a car? Is it a good time to buy a car? Have increased kind of 9x between January and February, and then into March and April of 2020. And really, the savvy car shopper, they've turned to digital to compare models, prices, looking for digital showrooms, virtual car tours, walkthroughs, everything like that. But really, they're looking for deals now more than ever before, because there is a curiosity in the market. And price, well, it's always been an influential factor, I think, for auto purchasers. So it's no surprise that, current deals, if we look out at the market right now, that are being offered by automakers, are really, heightening people's interest in what's out there. Search volumes, for best car deals and trucks are down, quite a lot if we look at it year on year, but definitely week on week, month on month, there's a resurgence. So if we look at kind of search in behavior across key states, for brand searches, used car servicing and parts, over the next few slides, in particular for brand right now. So, I think we can all see that there's a lot of increased OEM branded TV and digital spots that are running across the states right now, which is really what we're seeing is resulting in increased brand traffic. And we're also seeing a continued interest from customers who have already started their purchase journey pre-COVID-19. So as states are starting to open up, we're going to see really big swings in traffic. It's not going to be the same as it was year on year, but really encouragingly, we are seeing, near double-digit growth week on week. And if we look at kind of used cars again by region, this data is about 12 days old now, but even in the last 12 days, we haven't been able to release that data yet. We're seeing swings again as certain states are opening up, and you can kind of see from the map here, with the exception of kind of Washington, a lot of these states have already started to open up to certain types of businesses. There's going to be more people on the road. And really, as I kind of said, this is a snapshot in time. And it's also worth noting as well that the concept of personal transport is now very important to consumers. As we're seeing a big reluctance and a big drop in demand for airline travel and shared ride services. And if we look at markets that are further along the COVID curve, such as Italy and China, our insights tell us that people who did not have a personal car pre-COVID are now much likelier to purchase, predominantly due to health and safety reasons. And, again, parts and service are really essential to majority of dealerships out there. But overall, they're down, and I think that, it's quite apparent to see. But, what we anticipate is that this is likely going to increase over the coming days and weeks as states are starting to open up, and quite literally more cars on the road, which means that there's going to be more services. But again, I'll talk throughout a couple of the slides later on about making sure that you've got your best foot forward and you're letting local customers know that your dealership is open, that your bays are open, the types of services that are available. So messaging is going to be really important to encourage people who are back out on the roads that they're open, because it's going to be very much down to the dealerships as well to let people know that they're open. And for parts as well, so part searches, they're varying by region. They do on a good day, as they do now. So Oklahoma, Washington, Georgia, starting again seeing increases in part searches again as the states are starting to open up. And again, as I mentioned on the last slide, it's really important to highlight your local digital footprint. make sure you're active on, on Google, on Facebook, whatever it might be, and really start to use messaging that highlights, what parts and services are available. Finance. Okay, so a couple of slides back, I showed a huge spike in traffic for is now a good time to buy a car. Really, what we're seeing is that finance, things like that it's going to be big business over the next couple of months. And what we're seeing really is that there is an overall decline in search demand year on year, but those who are still shopping are increasingly interested in getting a great deal on a new vehicle. A good deal or some low APRs that could really speed along that path to purchase. And auto shoppers are seeing kind of 0% annual purchase rates. Financing and cash discounts really is the strongest influencers to expedite that vehicle purchase. Because really a lot of our research shows us at a global level is that we call it auto intenders. So people who were planning on buying a new or used car are still in the market for it. And really kind of, we've seen OEMs and automakers, respond with financing deals like new interest financing for 72 to 84 months, or they've also moved to assist customers who need help with, with their payments by offering no penalty payment deferments and things like that. But overall, again, it's important to note that we're seeing fluctuations in search volumes across parts, branding, used, finance, every day, every week, and it's going to change. But one thing is definitely for sure, that the market's moving forward.
So, moving forward, what can we expect to happen, right? So now we're kind of going to go out on a bit of a limb here, but we thought it'd be helpful to kind of take a look at, the past few recessionary downturns to see if there are any patterns that emerge for the subsequent recovery. So kind of take a look at that. So this is what you're looking at here. This is vehicle sales data compiled by the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis. Now those vertical gray bars that you're looking at they basically represent the economic recessionary downturns. So let's focus on the two most recent examples of extremely sharp decline. So the first would be the dot-com bubble of the late 90s, and then the more recent financial crisis of 07, 08. So we're not as interested in how long it takes to hit bottom, but more so once the bottom is hit, how long does it take to return to that pre-crisis sales volume, right? So for the dot-com bubble, we're looking at 39 months basically to get back, right? On the other hand, the financial crisis, which lasted much longer and went deeper, that took much longer at 52 months to get back to those pre-recession sales levels. Now, the important point that we want to make here is that once the bottom hits, sales seem to recover on a pretty steep upward trajectory. So, that's what makes adapting quickly to these new market realities so crucial, as you want to make sure, you're positioned to capture as much of those returning sales as possible. So, Darragh, is that kind of what you're seeing on your end? With the data that you're getting over at Google?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's great to see that from our internal sources, and what we're seeing from third parties as well, like JD Power, and what we're talking to Adtaxi about as well, that we're all kind of in alignment with kind of that initial bottom out, and again that kind of the slow road to recovery as well. And I think as well, kind of when you look at the wholesale auction sales in particular, I think that there's going to be as you can see, there's an initial resurgence already. And again, as people are, as I talked about with some of the trends we're seeing in used cars, and again, that need for personal transport, I think that, wholesale auctions are going to recover probably quite quickly, because there's going to be a demand for used cars in particular.
Yeah. So shifts in consumer behaviors. Every crisis causes long-term changes in consumer behavior. So think back to 9/11. Before then, you could go to the airport, walk straight down, straight to your gate, get on the plane, no problem. Nobody expects to do that anymore, right? We know going to the airport's a whole thing now. It's not anything like it used to be. So, we can expect that a pandemic of this scale is more than likely going to cause large changes in consumer habits as well. And, you know, your dealership is going to need to make those changes, those adjustments to cater to, you know, that new environment. Adtaxi and Google we've both been curious of what those changes might be. So we kind of wanted to share some insights from recent consumer surveys and you know, talk through some easy adaptations that your dealership can make in response. So this particular survey is you know, those people are in market for a new or used vehicle. Like, you know, what do they like to see? What do they expect to see? What are they hoping to see? So, you know, 72% would be more inclined to purchase today if they could delay their payments, whereas 60% would be more inclined to purchase today if the dealership offered home delivery. And 67% believe that dealerships are taking steps to ensure their safety. So you can kind of see those things are all kind of tied into, you know, what's happening right now with the virus. It's about, you know, staying safe. You know, hey, how about you bring it to my house so I don't have to leave? And by the way, you know, this economy is pretty rough right now. Could we delay those payments? So that's what people are, you know, really hoping to see and are responding to. Now, this consumer messaging preferences, these findings are from another article that we were involved in. This time kind of dealing with consumers in general and not just auto shoppers, more specifically with their opinions, you know, just on various questions around advertising. So, you know, 81%, you know, which is a large number, favor, and you know, any brands offering free services, right? While 68% appreciate it when ads, you know, show that regard for, you know, this current, you know, pandemic that we're in right now. You know, that kind of that classic car dealer ad, not necessarily, you know, the most friendly end user ad at this current climate that we're in. And even, you know, if you look over 62% understand and agree that companies serving ads have good intentions right now, you're going to want to take great pains to kind of stay on that side of that opinion. You know, I think you kind of get where I'm coming from. Those old, you know, typical ads, they're probably not just going to fly right now. People are looking for more. So that being said, anything to do with, you know, flexible payment terms, as well as added value, that should be, you know, you should be shouting that from the rooftops. Free home delivery, home pickup for services. You know, they're the sort of things that are going to go a long way to kind of get that consumer, you know, over to your side. So, you know, kind of open up new lines of communication. You know, Darragh's got some good information on that.
Yeah, so I think as well, you know, thinking about customer preferences, you know, it's really important to try and make those preferences a reality. It's interesting enough, kind of, Mike, when we were chatting yesterday, I was saying I'm in the process of buying a used car myself, and I can really tell you how important it is that the digital aspect of it, the contactless, is really important to myself and my wife, and not having to go to a dealer. And I think really one of the reasons why we chose the particular dealership that we bought from is the fact that even on a used car, you could feel they were going that kind of that extra mile in terms of trying to help us and making sure that we were comfortable and ultimately that everyone was safe as well, you know. But kind of digging in a bit more to these open lines of communication. So, I mean, you know, it's really important, I think, to start considering, you know, chats and virtual consultations. You know, what paperwork can customers complete at home today? You know, what steps can they do from the comfort of their home so they don't have to come to the showroom? You know, can service customers, can they talk to technicians live? Over video so they can see in real time maybe the issues of the work being done on their car, or vice versa, to avoid any maybe unnecessary trips. And you know, can the dealers then come out and collect the car for parts and servicing, things like that? You know, are sales apps available to discuss specific vehicles, features, or incentives live? Google Meet is a great is Google's e-commerce video conferencing platform, and we've made it free for users. So this is a great way, essentially, you know, an innovative way to connect with your potential customers. And finally, on that Google My Business page as well, which is kind of like, I'll talk about it a little later, which is your front line of, I think, of local sales and advertising for your business. There's a great chat functionality that you can link to your Google My Business profile. So really make sure that's connected as well. You know, and then, you know, kind of building on those preferences and that communication, really, you know, we need to start thinking about alternative customer service models, you know, change change in general can be challenging, but I think that going forward, there's going to be a big shift, I think, in how potential customers are buying cars, and it's important, I think, that dealerships to be successful. And if we've seen from historically as well that decisions made now can have a big impact on the business in the short term and the medium term. So kind of looking at this, I know the slide here is busy itself, but it's important, I think, to correctly attribute value to the various digital marketing efforts that we're going to be trying to adapt to, and to track these touch points. So again, kind of, are you offering the ability to transact online? A recent study actually we ran in the US told us that 18% of potential auto buyers would be more inclined to purchase a vehicle faster if they could do most of it, if not all of it, online. Do we have a process to appraise trade-in remotely? Again, kind of what paperwork can customers kind of complete at home today? Can some or all of the financing process be brought online? And a big one as well is, the ability to offer at-home test drives for new and used vehicles is going to be a big going to be change, and it's going to take a lot of logistics, but that's probably one of the number one asks right now in terms of that contactless model going forward. And then, thinking about your messaging, look, another busy slide, but I think it's really, really important to highlight a lot of this. It's really important to audit and optimize your search and video creatives to suit the current environment. Make sure you're covering all those kind of key elements, so tone, copy. Buying a car is a very visual product. Make sure your visuals are in check, be it that video or image. Make sure your keywords are appropriate and they're relevant to this kind of new reality. Make sure all of your calls to actions as well, any ad copy that you're running, make sure that they're very accurate right now with any of the latest deals or incentives coming from your own dealership or from the OEMs, and kind of be mindful of statements, I think, kind of like hurry in today or get here now, things like that. There's already a sense of urgency around the place. We don't need to create more. And again, I think I'll talk about it later on. Well, I know I'll talk about it later on, but video is a really innovative and good way to highlight inventory and service offerings. And there's going to be, we're seeing interest, we're seeing a resurgence and build on people looking for virtual showrooms, digital dealerships. And finally as well, highlighting offers or incentives, coming from the dealership or the OEM. Again, you saw some stats on financing. Myself and Mike have already talked about it in some of the previous slides. And, payment flexibility and financing is really going to be big during this crisis as well. Next slide, Mike.
I thought I'm showing it. Think about ways to give back.
Perfect. Okay, great. Maybe of course, we were inevitable to have one little glitch here anyway. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I moved my slide over and I'm looking at it. It's not showing on your end?
It's not showing on mine.
Okay.
There we go. Now I can see it. Perfect. So,
okay.
I can see it here. Yeah, it's great. So really important as well to, local dealerships really have, are central and the pride and joy of a lot of, a lot of areas, and a lot of the community as well, the pillars of the community. So it's really important, I think, to try and think about giving back as well. And some innovative and really great types of outreach that we've seen across the board is, dealerships offering loaner vehicles to medical staff and first responders who may be without a car or normally relying on kind of mass transit. Open your service base to first responder fleet vehicle as well, and make sure that they're on the road so they can stay supporting everybody in the front lines. Maybe consider complimentary or discounted services to medical staff. A free vehicle cleaning or sanitization or even an oil change will go a long way. And finally as well, working with your teams to prepare care packages or deliver meals to hospital staff working around the clock is a really good way to give back and kind of, establish yourselves as pillars of the community.
Hold on.
Next. Perfect.
You have that one there?
I don't.
I don't know so you're not seeing begin to value online metrics?
I can see it now. Perfect. I think there's just a little delay.
Yeah, it must be behind or something.
Yeah, so perfect. So I mean, so all things considered, okay, typically, one of the main measures of digital and in general was how many people were walking into the lot or walking into the showroom and ultimately purchasing cars. So it's really important now that as we move to a contactless digital way of selling, that we need to start valuing these online metrics more. Um, you know, thinking of tracking engagement metrics, lead forms, track virtual test drive views, digital showroom visits, really anything that we can highlight the potential switch to these higher value web conversions while foot traffic is going to be naturally down for maybe the short to medium term.
Okay. Did the next slide, I just wanted to make sure it did before I move on here, Darragh. Did that next slide pop up,
Yes,
defining
sir.
success?
Yes, we
Okay.
can.
So it looks like, I think our connection kind of popped in and out here, but hopefully we're back up and running good now. So defining success in a depressed market, along with, that potentially shifting which marketing conversions you focus on, you may need to shift how you think about your overall sales success as well. So we've been in such a hot market since 2008. There's literally a whole generation of salespeople and even sales managers that have never experienced a year-over-year decline in automotive sales. So a depressed sales climate, it's all about capturing market share, right? So look at all the sales available in your primary market area, and then look at how many you are actually selling. So your sales divided by that total market is your market share. So benchmark that number and literally dedicate, yourself, your dealership into, aggressively focusing on increasing that market share. Those dealerships that adapt now, adapt early, they're going to be the ones that are best positioned to capture more than their fair share when sales start climbing back up. So, be sure not to put yourself in a position where you have to play catch up. Don't get, all anxious that you're falling behind, in anything that's out of your control, right? There's a lot of conditions that are just outside of your control. Just focus on capturing as much of that market share as you can compared to your competitors. So kind of looking forward, now that we have that foundation laid, let's kind of, look at that potential roadmap for, the next 12 months. We're going to break it down into 3 phases. Basically what can and should be done right now immediately, what you should implement over the next few months, and what you should shoot to have done within like the next 12 months or so. So, Darragh, I'm going to, lean on you to talk to us about this immediate part of looking forward, if you would.
Yes, thanks, Mike. So I think kind of, one of the first things we need to look at is what's the first interaction that potential customers are going to see, and that's going to be our Google My Business page. So really, it's this is the first line of sales, and it's your digital dealership profile. So it's really important that you've got really accurate and up-to-date business information. So when customers are searching for local services or dealerships, that you're going to appear, you're going to rank, and they're going to be able to see that information. So ensure that your new hours are accurately reflected in your GMB profile, so Google My Business, and let people know if you've got expanded service offerings, each like vehicle delivery or remote test driving, things like that, or vehicle pickup, that sort of stuff. Share precautions that your business may be taking as well. It's really important to as I kind of touched on with my own purchasing experience, highlighting precautions and how dealerships are taking a proactive stance against COVID is really important. And one other one as well, it's kind of an opportunity to I would say to beef up your profile as well. So thinking about having your linking your GMB to your Google Street View listing, or also updating or adding more interior photos of the dealership, inventory and things like that, because you can see you have a couple of other options across the profile there for updates, reviews, photos. Really important to try and make the best use of that as possible.
Yeah, and then, we kind of just transition to, we are reopening for business, right? So a lot of you have probably been a lot of people in this call have probably been part of a store opening or a rebranding in the past, I would imagine. Everyone has at least one competitor that they've seen open in their market at one point. So traditional grand opening, it's all about getting that word out to as many people as possible and building, brand equity in your dealership. So essentially it's standing up and shouting from the rooftops that you're open. You have things that people want to buy and that you should buy them from you for, the following reasons, X, Y, and Z, right? Come to our dealership. I'm sure, many of you never technically closed your dealerships at all through this, this pandemic. But even if that is the case, a dedicated effort and marketing campaign to reassert yourself in the marketplace is really the single fastest way to instill confidence in potential buyers. So, the sooner that happens, the sooner you can reestablish the cash flow that your dealership needs to keep moving forward. So, every grand opening, it's more than just cutting a ribbon and opening the doors, right? There has to be a dedicated, thoughtful plan in place to kind of wring out as much of that benefit to your dealership as possible. The most important part is how much money you're able to put into that effort, right? That number is going to frame the rest of your decisions. So be aggressive. The long-term dividends, they're going to make it worth it. In a grand opening, it's all about driving awareness. So choose your marketing platforms with that in mind. So direct mail within your PMA, an email blast, geo-targeted display, and social campaigns. Those all make perfect sense. Digital video as well would also be a great play. Basically, if nothing else, besides all the trends showing it, skyrocketing over the last several years, it's been a huge rise in streaming video consumption since this pandemic began. So it's definitely the place you want to be. Within those platforms, be a little more liberal than you may regularly be with your targeting. That laser focused targeting, it's typically the right call for most campaigns. But this strategy is meant to bring as many people into the top of that sales funnel as possible. So you would want to loosen up, your standard targeting a bit to achieve that. And then finally, craft messaging in a way that makes sense given the current situation. Things like, we're open, come on down, those old ad slogans, they may come off as, more than a little tone deaf, given the circumstances we're in. So again, you definitely want to instill confidence that doing business with you isn't going to put them at risk. So, we need to be mindful of that. And, I really want to kind of stress this piece too, to communicate with your vendor partners. Your communicating plan to your vendor partners is very important, and do it as early in the process as possible. Your vendor partners are often overlooked when it comes to communication, but I think they should actually be one of your first calls, quite honestly. Adtaxi itself, we're actually, fall into that B2B business category ourselves, because we act as a marketing vendor for our customers. And, I really can't stress how many times we could have been, much more of a factor and been a bigger help to some of our clients had we been consulted sooner in that decision-making process. A business typically outsources different things to a vendor because that vendor either has a skill set that you don't have or specialized knowledge and resources that you can't match internally. They want to be your partner. They want to help. So, be sure that you're reaching out and consulting them. Would you pretty much agree with that sentiment, Darragh?
Yeah, I would actually 100%. I think it's, if you want your customers communicate with you, and you communicate with customers, you got to do the same with your vendors as well. And that's really important to make sure that there's a centralized and a two-way strategy going on, because it's going to be really important when you're thinking about getting the dealership back on, up and running, online, open, whatever way situation you're in right now. It's going to be important that if you're doing it yourself or you're working with Adtaxi or another vendor, that you need to try and capture that existing consumer demand quickly and effectively. As we've seen from a lot of the previous slides, demand, search behavior, it's really changing on a daily and weekly basis, depending on what's happening and from your OEM, what their deals are seeing on TV, is your state reopening. And it's really important, I think, now more than ever, especially if everyone's using, if you're using Google, that you're capitalizing on things like, these 900% month-on-month increases in terms, is it a good time to buy a car? How should we be doing that? Tactical campaign types like dynamic search, which is catch-all campaigns, fully automated, really, really intelligent campaigns to help showcase used and new inventory online. Thinking about, building out campaigns and keywords that are focused on top used cars, top deals that are, going to ultimately bring in the most revenue for the dealership as well. And really thinking about, these certain parts and servicing campaigns as well. Include keywords that are tied to these specific services that you're offering. Make sure that if they're, if you're open to local, that they'll know about that as well. I talked about that importance of that clear and that concise messaging. And if you're not comfortable, advertising across all of your services, look back historically, see what the main types of services that are coming in, people coming into your base for, and start to advertise against those terms. So, building on that that demand, it's really important to re-engage to those who are displaying that shopping or purchase interest. Okay, so digital, I've talked a lot, and I work for Google, so obviously digital is going to be front and foremost for us, and it's really important because 92% of US auto shoppers, they'll research online before buying a car. I touched on it earlier on, but 18% of them within the study we run recently enough have told us that the right messaging, the right format, the right content, and the right offer will help them move their purchase cycle forward quickly. Search, display, video, they offer a great and a unique ability to speak to potential customers all the way through that path to purchase. And in fact, right now I can't stress enough, I think video in particular will be a new normal format for dealers going forward. Mike mentioned it when he was talking about reopening, but I think using platforms that allow for reach, and YouTube in particular will offer us the ability to make our showroom digital for all to see. And it's really important as well, leverage your data that you have right now. If you have email addresses, if we have remarketing lists, make sure we're deploying those across all of our digital strategies, so we can re-engage and start to communicate with these customers who already know about our dealership or who are searching for a used car or one of our brands.
And so, don't forget to take advantage of free media as well. So, we're open. Paid media is great and very important, but don't forget about those free ways to kind of get that word out. Get it up on your website, get it up on all the company's social media sites. Maybe even, if your staff is willing to help share it out, that would be great. And here's another one to really think about. Put in a call to your local TV stations, radio stations, and newspapers. Right, local news, it's been more than a little depressing lately, to say the least. So a feel-good story on what a local business is doing to reopen, the economy, get people back to work and serve their community. It's really a no-brainer. Plus it's, free media exposure for you. So, there's a good chance that you probably spend dollars with some of these, these people anyhow. So now's a good time to give them a call, maybe call in a favor, right? So, that's short term looking forward, 1 to 3 months. Let's, get those initial pieces taken care of as soon as possible, given, your local circumstances. As soon as that's done, you're going to want to shift your focus to that low hanging fruit you can go after now. And, that's going to have the greatest long-term impact. So let's kind of take a look at that next. So prioritize your marketing budget, prepare for the future. So here's a few ideas on kind of where to focus in that 1 to 3 month short term. Search engine optimization. It's typically not something that can really be turned on or off. The very nature of it means that you're moving forward or backward and never sitting still. So, I think we all know it takes time to increase those organic rankings on various search engines, and at time it's measured in months and years. So because of that, now is really a great time to really press ahead with your SEO strategy. And if you don't have a strategy, now's the time to start. As SEO, it's pretty low cost compared to a lot of the other marketing tactics. In fact, now's a great time to focus on your website in general. So, you could really do a deep dive into that site and try to see it through the eyes of a potential customer, right? Focus on, providing that seamless experience, as seamless of an experience as possible. Some things to think about when's the last time you updated your About Us page, right? Maybe you don't have an About Us page. Maybe, what about some of the content around, your involvement in the local community? Maybe, a selfie video of the owner telling customers just how much they're appreciated, especially now. Like, there's the opportunity to kind of be creative, right? They're only limited, really by your imagination. So just, kind of thinking out of the box is never been a better time for that, actually. So for any business that maintains some sort of customer list, which I would assume is most of you, if not all of you, I recommend taking a serious look into like data hygiene, right? Your customer list, is it accurate? Is it complete? Meaning the name, address, phone number, everything up to date. There's companies that can, append your customer list with those missing data fields, and it can be invaluable from a marketing perspective. Your customer list, it's your own first-party data. Companies like us, like Adtaxi, we're able to target your marketing on platforms like Google Search based off of, that data. So making sure that it's clean and complete as possible, it's going to put you in a great spot to come back strong when, we're on the other side of this. Also, make sure that your online reputation is in a good spot. Respond to those questions and comments, reach out to past customers, making sure that, they feel good about your company. Any improvement in reviews, it's only going to pay dividends in the long run. And then finally, benchmark what's going on from a media habit perspective. It's going to take a little more time to figure out just, how people's shopping behavior will change having experienced a pandemic. And it will probably take longer than just, 2 or 3 months to get a real clear picture of what changes have turned into, permanent fixtures. But you're going to need to make more adaptations down the line. So the next month or two is really the time you're going to want to establish that baseline behaviors so that you can, identify those long-term changes in the months down the road. Now, this next section kind of talks about, virtual showrooms and stuff like that, which I'm going to turn over to Darragh right now.
Thanks, Mike. So yeah, I think it's a really, really important point, is about, to continually track changing media habits. You're dead right in saying that it's not going to just resolve itself, I think, in the next couple of months. And a lot of our insights from a Google perspective, and I know the dealers are feeling this on the ground, but there's a big change happening right now. So keeping track of those habits and understanding, talk to your customers as well, see what they, what do they want to hear from them. And when we've been talking to potential auto customers, really what they have been telling us is they want, and I've talked to it again, it's that contactless, that digital experience. Again, video I think is a really popular play here for it, and it's always been popular with OEMs and a lot of dealers alike. People want to engage with vehicles. They still want to test drive them. They want to be at the showroom. They just now need to do it closer to home. I think it's really important as well that we should be offering virtual test drives. Take time to create custom content about a car walkthrough, about a digital test drive as well. We're seeing a lot of increased searches around the terms for virtual test drive, virtual walkthrough, and things like that. These videos, they don't need to have $1 million production budget. Some of the most successful and most watched dealer videos on YouTube are actually shot on a mobile device. You mentioned that there might go out, take a selfie and then talk them through the car. People want that. They crave that personal experience. So you don't need to have, the Hollywood studio with you in the car lot when you're trying to walk them through that new car. And considering as well, live stream events, you talk about relaunches, reopenings, new car launches, looking at broader live stream events as well for new models or major sales events. You could consider using video streaming platforms like YouTube as well, which, can also drive, a scaled awareness to your dealership. And again, kind of just building on that video piece, Mike, you mentioned it as well, digital watch times are going up, video watch times in particular across multiple platforms, not just YouTube, are going up. We're seeing kind of, people are looking for those online videos, those test drives. They're trying to fill that void of those closed dealer lots. Automotive watch time in general on YouTube, automotive watch time specifically on YouTube has increased about 39% year on year. And again, kind of double digits week on week as well. So again, it kind of talks to the fact that a lot of people are, are still searching for cars, still intending on purchasing. They just want to try and get as much information out to avoid having to go to the dealership. And we know from our path to purchase studies that YouTube is a top destination for auto purchasers to try and experience a vehicle through video. On YouTube, we see the top video content and that people want while researching vehicles. Again, it's test driving right now, and it's vehicle walkarounds. We've highlighted some of them there, but we've got some really innovative formats designed to drive lead generation, to target users who we know are actively searching for your dealership or your brand. We can comfortably, put content in front of people who are searching near in real time for your particular brand or service, or if we know based on their browsing behavior that we can start to target. We know the signals that they're giving off online, that they're telling us that they're in the market for a newer used car. And, again, times are going to be tight, and the decisions, again, I think if we look back from the last major recession, short-term decisions that were made had long-term implications. So really important to start assessing your budgets across your profit centers. If you had quite rigid budgets before, be it for traditional or digital marketing, or really budgets in general, I think it's really important that you now need to be flexible and fluid and be able to, pivot to maybe sales, used, or servicing, depending on what spikes or trends that you're seeing. And really as well, we've got a lot of great information out there, that we've done studies with partners, with dealership partners, and one in particular is Google's Dealership Guidebook 2.0. I would definitely encourage everyone on the line to download that or reach out to Adtaxi for a copy of it. It's really, really innovative, and it's got some great insights in terms of how to drive profitability for your dealership. So looking forward, I think, we've had a kind of the now next, well, what's later, okay? So looking at, I think looking at the key elements of that online purchase, okay, what are the behaviors? And I think we've talked a lot about it through the webinar and discussed, different ways to digitize and simplify the road to a new car. What we're seeing at an OEM level is, fast loan approvals, competitive and transparent pricing and incentives, trying to limit or remove all physical paperwork. And finally, digitizing sales and service offerings where possible is going to be really those key elements, I think, to that online purchase. And really, I think, again, going back to 18% of people I said earlier on in one of our recent US surveys that said that, if we could nearly fully e-com the entire purchase, we would see 18% of our potential customers who would probably buy a car faster. So it's definitely something to think about. I said earlier on that change is tough and it can be slow, but it's really important, I think, to start making some of these decisions now, because long term it's going to have a much more positive effect for the business. And I think it's important to highlight as well, I don't think you need to do it all yourself. We've seen many great examples of where the OEMs themselves are stepping up to help. How can they do some of the heavy lifting for you? Can you, is there ways to get involved in, advocacy or dealership councils? Interesting idea of this or a concept that, FCA, Sophia Chrysler Automobiles, they've launched their Drive Forward initiative, which aims to boost auto sales that have been hammered by coronavirus. And that's been a far-reaching strategy that's come down from the OEMs to the dealerships. And I think that's a great way. So I would definitely encourage you, if those relationships exist, reach out to the OEMs, see what's happening. And, there's a lot of great work that's being done at the top level that I think we can tack onto as well.
Thanks, Darragh. And, the kind of last section here of the long-term plan. So, the automotive industry, it's actually, pretty lucky in a way, because anyone that has attended a digital dealer conference or an NADA within the last 18 months knows that digital retailing, it's been a huge focus. So if you've already installed a digital retailing solution within your dealership, you're really ahead of the game. Well, if not, then it's time to get started. But be aware, COVID-19, it's really the catalyst that, is going to push online vehicle sales into the mainstream for the auto industry. Every single survey that we've seen, including those that we've conducted, point to a huge majority of people leaning, into that method. If you're looking for a provider, I recommend starting with conversations within, your website provider, your DMS and CRM providers. There's a lot of integrations that need to happen seamlessly to make digital retailing work, and those platforms are the ones most heavily affected. So start there and then branch out if you're not happy with what you get. Now, once you have the technology, the work is just beginning. Digital retailing needs to permeate every single part of that sales process for it to live up to the promise of easing, the friction between customers and the dealership. So you're going to need to codify the process changes that need to happen at your dealership to thrive within this new dynamic. What are the rules in the process for, at-home test drives? How do you handle virtual trade appraisals consistently? How does this change or, affect the traditional steps that the sale, that we all came up with, on in the business? Put some serious thought behind this and make sure that leadership is brought in across each department, including, parts, service, finance. There may even need to be staffing changes as a result, or at the very least, a redefining of responsibilities and expectations. Now, if all you do is, install the code on your website, you're going to end up like those companies that create a Facebook page and, basically convince themselves that they have a social media strategy. So, again, digital retailing adoption is going to be a key factor moving forward in determining which dealerships are successful and which are not successful, over these basically next 5 years. So, be sure not to kind of get caught flat-footed with that. So this part here, value online metrics. So we put together a couple things that Darragh's going to go through, including some resources right after this.
Yeah, so I think we've covered a lot, and I think there's going to be a lot of new digital touch points I think that are going to be really valuable when we're considering the wider online strategy. It's really important, I think, to adjust your marketing efforts appropriately based on the observed media habits that we're seeing. Right? Is it video? Is it social? How are people interacting with me? Making sure that we're tracking all of those various touch points. Really important to continue and monitor trends and data to make the most informed decisions and optimizations for your account and your various media strategies, and really start to measure digital touch points to help attribute sales. Start thinking about when you're talking to your customers, what are their top 3 asks? Can we incorporate them into our website? Mike mentioned now is a great time to start updating your website from maybe a UI or a cosmetic experience. Thinking about ways and touch points that we can track. We call them, middle engagements. Think about like maybe requests for at-home test drive. Can we track, video reviews? Maybe people who are clicking onto our digital showrooms. Do we have an online configurator that we can start to track as well? I talked about, virtual test drives. Can we start to track those if we have the content available? We should be tracking any sort of video conferencing or any sort of outreach as well. And ultimately something really simple like calls from ads. You know, if we're running Google ads and we're using the ability to call from our ads, make sure that we're tracking those in the account as well. And collectively, what that will start to give you is that it'll start to give you overall trends and insights around kind of the overall behavior of the people who are coming to your website. And then from that, you can diagnose what's good and what's bad and where to start to allocate your resources. So I'm just going to jump in quickly here as well. And just, it's really important, I think, you know, we've talked a lot about COVID and you know, the right messaging, the right tone, and making sure that we're being there, we've got our best foot forward, we're being hyper relevant. I think it's just really important from a policy perspective as well to outline a couple of things. You know, what we don't want from a Google Ads perspective, now this is just for Google Ads, what we don't want is we want to avoid keywords with COVID-19 related terms. And having that in our ad copy as much as possible. We've got quite a lot of restrictions on the use of that term right now to make sure that we're freeing it up for charities, NGOs, and hospitals and things like that who should be you know, appearing for those sort of searches. So really important that, you know, there's a lot more that we can talk about without actually having to specifically relate you know, to COVID-19. And what we've seen from a lot of our search behavior is people are asking broader questions of the dealership. They're not specifically searching with COVID-19 related terms. So just bottom line, make sure they're outside of your keywords, outside of your ad copy. And we've a lot of great additional resources that will, you know, help you power your strategy and give you more comfortability and familiarity with kind of digital going forward as well. A lot of them are on Google. I would definitely encourage you to check them out. And I know that Mike and the Adtaxi team have a couple they want to talk about as well.
Yeah, thanks, Darragh. So just keep in mind that, you know, you're not in this on your own. You have resources like what Darragh just mentioned, and, you know, keeping an eye on materials coming out of your local chamber of commerce or the Better Business Bureau. You know, seek out experts within the automotive industry and see what they have to say. LinkedIn is, you know, really invaluable for this sort of thing. And I recommended this earlier, but, you know, check in with your vendors and your partners. They work with a lot of other companies. They have a lot of ideas that are, you know, working elsewhere that you you just might not have thought of on your own. And then finally, check out the resources that Adtaxi has available on our website. You know, we're releasing content all the time. So if any of this, you know, webinar has been helpful to you, you're very likely to find other items that we've, you know, produced that would be, you know, very helpful as well. Just to kind of recap, right, getting things back to business. So again, you know, we're likely, you know, past the bottom of the market. So that's the good news. It's the real good news. And, you know, so you're going to focus on capturing that increased market share. You know, remember that consumer expectations, they've definitely changed. It's, you know, once we're completely on the other side of this, you know, nobody knows exactly what this is going to look like, but I think most people would agree it's going to look different, right? And we're going to have to adjust to it. You know, of course, get that word out. You're open for business again. You know, very important. People don't know, and they won't know. We're really going to have to make people know, because I think it's going to be a very staggered, you know, opening throughout. Start taking those steps now. They're going to pay dividends later. And again, reach out to your partners for help and advice, right? So just want to thank everybody on behalf of Darragh and Adtaxi and Google and myself. Thank you for taking the time to attend this webinar. We hope that, you know, now you have a framework for, you know, getting your dealership back to business. If you're a client of Adtaxi, you know, please reach out to your rep for any questions, any evaluation, and further insight. If you aren't a client but you have any questions or a need for evaluation or any insight, please go to adtaxi.com or email info@adtaxi.com. Again, thank you all very much. Thank you for your time. Be safe and take care of yourselves. Have a great day.